Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Professor Dr. Rizwan Jamil Qureshi. Welcome to the lecture number 13 of System Analysis and Design course. In the lecture number 12, we already covered about the requirement gathering techniques. Now I am covering the requirements modeling techniques. In order to model the requirements, how many techniques are available most commonly used? We have data flow diagrams and UML, Unified Modeling Language. Let's talk about data flow diagrams in this lecture. The data flow diagram has some specific symbols, naming process, data store, entity, and data flow. Entity is also called source or sink. We have two types of modeling notations. One is introduced by DeMarco and Jordan, and second is by Gain and Sasson. Process symbol is different in the DeMarco and Jordan style, and Gain and Sasson similarly. Data store is different, but entity source sink is the same, and data flow is also the same. The process is an amount of work or action performed on data inside the system. And data store is like a table where data is stored and data is manipulated. Entity. Entity is a thing that can be uniquely identified. It's the origin or destination of data outside the system, not inside the system. And the data flow that shows the movement of data between entity to process and vice versa. The context diagram is the first diagram that is designed during the requirement modeling, and that shows the boundaries of the system, external entities, not internal, major information flow between the entity and the system. Like, for example, context diagram for the Hosier Burgers food ordering system as per the modern system analysis and design by Jeffrey Hoffer. There is a customer and the food ordering system is there. Restaurant manager is the entity, customer is the entity, kitchen is the entity. So customer placed the order, then he received the receipt, and food ordering system call the kitchen by sending information about the order, and the restaurant manager has the reports for all the food ordering systems, the orders that have been placed. Processes are labeled as 1.0, 2.0, and so on. The level 0 diagram, which is the next diagram in the data flow diagramming technique. Like, for example, level 0 diagram, customer entity, kitchen entity, restaurant manager is the entity, and processes. We break down the main process into sub-processes like 1.0, receive and transform customer order. And the kitchen will receive the order, update food, update goods sold file. 2.0, the goods sold, update inventory file process. 3.0, inventory data, and the data store, goods sold file. D2, data store 2, inventory file, data store 1. 4.0 process, produce management reports based on the daily inventory amounts and the restaurant manager will generate the report based on the what are the orders placed, what are the goods sold. There are two data flow diagram guidelines that must apply. The inputs to a process are different from the outputs. Process is used to transform inputs into outputs. Objects on a data flow diagram have unique names. Every process should have a unique name. There are some rules. No process can have only input and no output. It must have input, it must have output. And a process has a verb phrase label because it is an action, function, or method. Similarly, there is a possibility that there is one input into a process and more than one output. And there is also possibility there is more than one input and one output. The data store. Data cannot move directly from one data store to another data store. It must be moved through the process. Data cannot move directly from an outside source to a data store. Data must be moved by a process that receives data from the source and places the data into the data store. Data cannot move directly from entity to an entity from a data store. Must be through the process. A data store has a noun phrase label like student, employee, manager. Source and the sink, the entity. Data cannot move directly from source to a sink, entity to entity. It must be through the process. An entity has a noun phrase label, should have a name. The data flow, a data flow has only one direction, a flow between symbols. It may flow in both directions between the process and a data store. A fork in a data flow means that exactly the same data goes from a common location to two or more different processes. A join in data flow means that exactly the same data can come from one of the two or more different processes. A data flow can directly back to the same process it leaves. No data flow between the source and the process without having label. It must have a label. As I just covered, the data flow diagram shows the functional decomposition like 1.0. So we can have level 1, level 2. We can draw up to 18 levels. Like this is level 1. Access goods sold and inventory data 4.1. Aggregate goods sold and inventory data 4.2. Prepare management reports 4.3. Similarly, each process can be decomposed into further sub-processes until we achieve the most linear level and we cannot further divide it. So this is different examples to show for the data flow diagrams. Thank you very much. Jazakallah khair.